Good afternoon. Today, at Toronto Police Headquarters, Homicide Detective Sergeant Gary Giroux will update the media on the investigation into homicide number 59 of this year.
Thank you and good afternoon. So I'd like to update you with regards to Homicide 59 for 2018. So we're approximately a little over 24 hours into the investigation, and this is what we know so far. On Wednesday, the 25th of July, 2018, at approximately 11 a.m., the Toronto Police Communications Bureau received a series of 911 calls with regards to a shooting. The location given was Islington Avenue and Milady Road, which is in North Etobicoke within 31 Division. Police, fire, and ambulance attended the scene, which initially, on its face, appeared to be a traffic accident. The deceased in this matter is identified as Kevin Boche, and the surname is spelled B-O-A-K-Y-E, 24 years of Toronto. The deceased was the driver and the lone occupant of a dark-colored Dodge Journey. When found, the deceased had driven through a metal chain-link fence and was mounted on the front lawn of a private home that's situated at the northeast corner of Islington Avenue and Milady Road. It was quickly determined that the deceased had been shot. The deceased died quickly at the scene within minutes. Minutes earlier, the deceased had been stopped at a red traffic light for westbound Duncanwoods Drive and Islington Avenue. Duncanwoods Drive is the next intersection north of the location that the deceased vehicle came to rest. The deceased was stopped at the red light waiting to make a left turn to proceed southbound on Islington Avenue. Directly behind the deceased was another vehicle driven by a private citizen and a witness to the shooting. As the deceased was waiting for the light to turn green, the suspect auto drove west along Duncanwood and pulled up beside the deceased vehicle on the passenger side and fired numerous shots into the deceased vehicle. The deceased accelerated through the red traffic light to proceed southbound on Islington Avenue. At this point, he would have already been wounded. The suspect vehicle is described as a newer model silver or gray Hyundai Elantra. The suspect turned right and was last seen traveling northbound on Islington at a high rate of speed. The shooter would have been the driver of the Elantra. The deceased, now wounded, drove southbound on Islington Avenue. At this point, we believe the deceased began to lose consciousness as he drove southbound and had already been wounded. The deceased vehicle mounted the grassy boulevard on the west side sidewalk of Islington Avenue, proceeding southbound. The deceased drove 300 feet on the boulevard, knocking down and uprooting trees and metal signposts. At this point, the deceased vehicle re-entered the roadway and drove diagonally southeast across all 4 lanes of Islington Avenue. The deceased vehicle mounted the east sidewalk and drove through a chain-link fence and some bushes of this residential home on the northeast corner of Islington Avenue and Milady Road. Both airbags were deployed and the deceased died at this location. My officers and officers from 31 Division have been collecting video in the general vicinity since the time of the shooting. A full forensic examination took place yesterday, including the forensic examination unit, traffic reconstructions, and 3-dimensional scanning, and a drone was in the area as well to capture the scene. I'm making the traditional appeal from the homicide squad with regards to witnesses to come forward to assist in the investigation. I'm most specifically talking about the individual who was parked in a passenger vehicle directly behind the deceased on Duncanwood when the suspects pulled up beside the deceased car and started to fire at him. He would have only been a number of feet away from the deceased and the suspects when the shooting started. As I indicated, the shooting is coming from the driver's window into the passenger side of the deceased dark Journey motor vehicle. And this private citizen, who also waited for the light to turn red, proceeded southbound on Islington Avenue and ultimately would have driven past the deceased location as he had mounted his vehicle onto this citizen's private home further south. So I'm encouraging that individual to come forward. I'm sure it was very frightening for him to experience, but at this point, we need his assistance. He can provide us a tremendous amount of investigative narrative with regards to the shooting itself, number of occupants of the vehicle, possibly a vehicle plate, last direction of travel, et cetera. So I'm encouraging that specific individual and anyone else in the area. It's quite remarkable that there are no other injuries as the vehicle was moving southbound on Islington Avenue. As I indicated, at one point, it spent a tremendous amount of time, about 300 feet, basically on the west sidewalk of Islington Avenue, traveling southbound, and then diagonally across all 4 lanes of traffic onto a private home at Milady and Islington Avenue. So if anybody was in the area at the time with dashboard camera or this particular individual in the vehicle behind the deceased, I encourage that individual to come forward now. Can I answer any of your questions?
Detective, do you believe this was targeted?
I do. I don't believe that you know, an individual just happened to, you know, run into this particular victim. I think they were looking for them, or else they had received some information that he was at a certain place at a certain time. I can tell you that the deceased was parked or stopped at the traffic light for several seconds waiting for the light to turn green, and it wasn't for several seconds did the suspect vehicle pull up beside him.
Was anybody home at time in the house where the vehicle ended up?
I didn't arrive until an hour or so after, so I'm not certain. It is a private home, and there's a substantial amount of damage to the home and the fence and the property, et cetera, but I'm not...
Or they were witnesses?
I don't believe that particular home has one. We have been concentrating on residential cameras, and there seem to be certainly a lot more of them lately.
Was he known to police?
He was known to the police. And of course, like in any other investigation, the deceased background will form part of the investigation.
Any known gang connections?
Not that we're aware of, no.
How many shots were fired in general, and was it all through the window, or did they go through the door?
The shots appeared to be coming in just in the area of the window, the lower edge of the window and the frame of the car where it comes together. It caused the window to break, and there's glass debris both on the road surface and in the center of the intersection further north on Islington Avenue. And as far as number of shots, the postmortem examination is ongoing right now.
Islington is such a busy street, even in midday, and for someone to do something like this in broad daylight at 11 a.m., is this a new level of brazenness for this kind of activity?
Well, I've certainly seen it before, and you're right, it is a very densely populated area. That's why I say it's also, I noticed that Islington Avenue is extremely wide at this location, and he traveled across those 4 lanes, and fortunately, no one else was injured.
So you made a plea for the person behind this targeted victim to come forward. You said him, so you know it's him.
Well, the individual driving the motor vehicle. I mean, I can see a portion of a video in the area where he's in close proximity to the bumper of the deceased vehicle. There doesn't appear to be any other vehicles besides this individual, and he doesn't proceed, as it turns out, westbound on Duncanwood, which would take him out of the area. He actually proceeds southbound, which would take him right past the carnage that just took place on Islington, right past the final resting place of the Dodge Journey.
But are you sure it was a male driver that you're looking for, the witness that you're seeking?
I'm not certain, actually. It could be a male, could be female. It's difficult to determine that. I would describe it as a passenger vehicle, again, light gray or silver.
And you don't think that person's involved?
I don't.
The behavior is not.
It's not, and actually that individual remains in position. He actually moves forward to the traffic line, waits for the light to turn green, and then proceeds southbound. But by that point, the deceased had moved into the intersection through the red light, had proceeded southbound, and he would, in fact, as he made the southbound turn, be able to see the debris field, which was quite substantial. Trees were ripped out, branches littered all over the sidewalk, et cetera. He would have been able to see that, or she would have been able to see that.
Video surveillance. The scenario you're painting is all from video?
This brief interaction with regards to the citizen, yes.
Why cordon off and close down the park beside the crime scene?
I think that's just an experienced division being prudent with regards to making a crime scene as big as possible. It seems to be a bone of contention with us that we always end up expanding the scenes once we get there. And this is a very, very experienced division. And so they're used to doing things the way we'd like them done.
The deceased appears to be very well-dressed, conservatively dressed with a button-down shirt, and doesn't seem to be sort of follow the normal pattern that we've seen perhaps of other individuals.
Yeah, I don't know very much about him at the current time. I know that my partners have been interviewing his girlfriend this morning and his mother, who both came in, are cooperating with the investigation. So we're trying to learn more about his background, his habits, his day-to-day activities, and that's ongoing.
Is that an area in general where that the victim would have lived or was expected to be driving?
That's part of what we're trying to determine, whether or not he had any reason, both lawful or unlawful, to be in the area.
You mentioned family, the girlfriend, any children?
He has 2 children.
2 children. Thank you.
Bigger family, like mom, dad, siblings, or just his mom?
We met with a family last night, and he's from Ghana originally, has a very large extended family and friends, and many of them came to the division last night to assist in any way they could by providing their names and contact information in the event that we needed to call them.
Is there any idea about how long that vehicle was perhaps following behind them? Because that's sort of a cutoff in Finch Avenue, that back road for going through there.
That's exactly what the conversation I had with my partners this morning with regards to going east along Duncanwood to check residential homes or plazas, banks, etc., with regards to whether any video comes right out onto Duncanwood. That's ongoing now.
Does it seem pretty clear, though, that the victim was being followed at the time?
Followed or found? I'm not certain which yet. Found, when I say that, I've had a couple of investigations where they've, as they go about their daily activity, have run into each other, and then they prepare for what they're about to do and what they did do. So that might have happened, like we're suggesting, further along on Duncanwood or some other portion of the city, and then they chose this particular location to attack the victim.
So there's no possibility then in your mind, from what you're looking at, that this could have been one of these road rages, I cut the wrong person off, some gangsters in their car, and they decide just to go crazy. There's no indication there's anything like that.
Not at this point, no. Whatever it is, I suspect is going to be something pre-existing between the deceased person and the individuals in the suspect vehicle.
Did you say how old the kids were?
I'll just say they're young, both under the age of 10. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. That concludes today's conference. The photographs will be available online shortly.